Darren Tate's boots hit the cracked concrete basement floor with a thud, and a sigh. He hadn't even finished his coffee before being called in for this last-minute job. "Daddy, don't forget Bunny." His 6-year-old daughter, Bella, called from the truck window, waving the ragged pink stuffed animal like it was a crown jewel. "I got it, baby," Darren said, holding the toy up with a tired grin. "I'll be back before dinner." "Stay with Miss Clara, okay?" He gave her a quick kiss on the forehead and shut the truck door. Clara, his 70-year-old neighbor-turned-babysitter, gave a small wave from the driver's seat. Darren watched the truck disappear, exhaled, and turned toward the old stone steps leading into the basement of the historic Stanton building downtown. The job was straightforward. Clean out the lower level of the building, which had been untouched for decades. He was expecting dust, maybe rats, and definitely back pain. What he didn't expect was her. She was crouched between two leaning shelves, sleeves rolled to her elbows, sorting through boxes like she had a personal vendetta against dusty files. "Excuse me," Darren said hesitantly. "I'm here to clean out the basement." The woman straightened. Her deep brown eyes met his, surprised but calm. She brushed a strand of dark hair out of her face. "Oh, you must be Darren. I'm Kiera," she said, offering a hand. "I'm just trying to make sense of this mess before it all gets tossed." Darren took her hand, calloused palm meeting manicured fingers. "You the building manager or something?" Kiera hesitated for a second, then smiled. "Something like that." He didn't push. He had no idea he was shaking hands with Kiera Fallon, CEO of Fallon and Hart Real Estate Group, and one of the youngest women to ever make the Forbes list. She was worth hundreds of millions, and she was standing in a dusty basement in sneakers and a hoodie. "I'll start over there," he said, nodding toward the far wall. "Great. Just don't throw out any boxes with red tape. I'm trying to archive those." They worked side by side in silence for a while, broken only by the occasional cough from dust or a muttered curse when Darren bumped into something. Kiera watched him carefully. There was something about the way he moved, steady, grounded. And then she spotted the photo peeking out of his wallet when he bent over him and a little girl, both grinning like they didn't care about anything else. "You have a daughter?" she asked softly. Darren straightened. "Yeah, Bella, 6 years old. She's my whole world." Kiera's heart tugged in a way she didn't expect. "That's sweet. I don't meet many guys who talk about their kids like that," he chuckled. "Well, when you're raising one on your own, they tend to take center stage." She tilted her head. "Where's her mom?" Left when Bella was 2. Said she wasn't cut out for diapers and late nights. Haven't heard from her since. Kiera's throat tightened. "I'm sorry," he shrugged. "We manage. I take whatever jobs I can get. Cleaning, moving, repairs. Bella doesn't care if we eat mac and cheese 5 nights a week as long as I'm there with her." Kiera smiled, her chest tightening. He wasn't like the men she worked with, slick suits, empty words, power games. Darren was real, solid, and handsome in that rugged, sun-worn way. "You ever think about doing something else?" she asked. He shrugged. "I think about a lot of things, but I've got a kid to raise. Stability matters more than dreams right now." Kiera nodded, then looked away, unsure why her heart was thudding so hard. They kept working. By late afternoon, Darren had loaded up 3 garbage bags and moved dozens of boxes. Kiera was still organizing the red-taped ones, her hair now in a messy bun and her sweatshirt covered in dust. "You sure you're not gonna pass out down here?" he asked. She laughed. "I'll survive. I've had worse days." Darren glanced at her. "You don't seem like someone who works in basements. And you don't seem like someone who should be juggling trash bags and fatherhood alone." He blinked at her, surprised. "You don't pull punches, do you?" "Nope," he chuckled, wiping sweat from his brow. "You got dinner plans?" Kiera looked up, startled. "What? I mean, not like just, I was gonna pick up pizza on my way home. Bella always wants me to bring leftovers. You helped with half this mess." "Least I can do." Kiera hesitated, heart pounding. "Sure, I love pizza." They walked out together and Darren held the door for her. Outside, the sun was starting to dip, painting the sky in orange and gold. "Where's your car?" he asked. "I walked." "You walked?" "In this part of town," she shrugged. "I like walking." He laughed. "You are something else, Kiera," she smiled, eyes meeting his. "So are you, Darren." He opened the passenger door of his truck for her, moving the booster seat and the pink bunny to the back. She slid in, and for a moment, they just looked at each other. She had no idea why her heart was racing. He had no idea she was a CEO. They both just knew something had shifted, and neither of them wanted it to stop. Kiera folded her napkin as Bella leaned forward across the booth, sauce on her chin and wide eyes locked onto Darren. "Daddy says I can't have soda unless it's a special occasion," Bella whispered, as if revealing a grand conspiracy. Kiera grinned. "Is tonight a special occasion?" Bella nodded solemnly. "You're here." Darren gave a quiet cough, eyes flicking between them. "Don't let her talk you into anything. She's a professional negotiator." Kiera reached for a clean napkin and gently wiped Bella's chin. "Well, I'm honored. But I think water's better for pizza anyway. Keeps the cheese the star of the show." Bella gave a thoughtful nod, then went back to her slice. Darren leaned back, arms crossed as he studied Kiera across the table. "You're good with kids." "I used to volunteer at a community arts program," she said, brushing a crumb from her sweater. "Mostly crafts and paint, but I picked up a few parenting tricks." He raised a brow. "You didn't strike me as the arts and glitter type." She shrugged. "People make a lot of assumptions." He didn't respond right away. Instead, he watched her tuck a strand of hair behind her ear as she helped Bella fold her greasy plate. There was something practiced about her movements, not stiff, but deliberate. Like she was used to being in control of things most people never even noticed. When the plates were cleared, Darren walked them to the truck. Bella skipped ahead with Bunny tucked under her arm, humming a tune only she could hear. "You didn't have to pay for all that," he said once they were outside. "I invited myself to dinner," Kiera replied. "Figured it was the least I could do." "You're not from around here, are you?" She paused. "What makes you say that? People around here don't usually wander into basements for fun." "I didn't say it was fun." He gave her a look as he unlocked the door. "You didn't seem miserable either." She hesitated. "It was grounding." Darren narrowed his eyes. "That's an odd word to use." Kiera smiled faintly. "Maybe, but it fits." Bella climbed into her booster seat, already drowsy from the evening. Darren helped her buckle in, then turned to Kiera. "You need a ride." "That depends." "Are you planning to kidnap me?" He laughed, shaking his head. "I don't even have the energy to argue with Bella about bedtime, let alone plot a kidnapping." "Then sure," she said. The drive was quiet at first, city lights flickering past the windows. Kiera glanced around the truck, taking in the worn dashboard, the faded air freshener, the faint scent of crayons and engine oil. It felt like a real life, lived in and unfiltered. "So what did you do before all this?" she asked. Darren kept his eyes on the road. "Construction, framing mostly. Worked for a guy who ran his crew out of the east side. Then the company folded and everything kind of fell apart." She waited, sensing there was more. "I had some savings. Used it to keep the lights on. Then Bella got sick for a while. Hospital bills ate the rest. After that, it was just about making sure we stayed afloat." Kiera's hands tightened in her lap. "That's a lot." "Yeah, but it's the kind of a lot that teaches you what matters." They pulled up in front of a modest apartment complex. Clara's porch light was still on, a small beacon in the growing dark. "She'll be out cold in 5 minutes," Darren said, glancing at the back seat. Kiera opened the door and stepped out. "Thanks for the ride," he nodded. "Thanks for dinner and for talking." She hesitated, then stepped closer. "You're not like the men I usually meet, Darren." "That sounds like a compliment and a warning." "Just a compliment." She hesitated. "I'll be at the building again tomorrow. Might find a few more mysteries in the walls." He offered a half grin. "I'll bring gloves." She walked down the sidewalk without looking back. Inside the apartment, Darren carried Bella up the stairs, her head resting on his shoulder. He laid her gently in bed, pulled the covers over her, and placed Bunny beside her pillow. Then he sat on the couch, staring out the small window at the street below. He didn't know what kind of woman Kiera really was, but she hadn't flinched at the sight of his life. She'd stepped into it like she belonged there. And for the first time in a long time, something unfamiliar stirred in his chest. Hope. Across town, Kiera pushed open the door to her penthouse suite. Her assistant's voice echoed from the intercom. "Your meeting with the board is at 9. The Tokyo call is rescheduled to Thursday. And your father left another message." She muted the panel and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Below, the city pulsed with light, motion, and ambition, but all she could think about was a little girl with pizza sauce on her chin. And her father, who looked at her like he didn't care who she was, only that she was real. She wasn't sure what she was doing, but she knew she'd be back in that basement tomorrow, and she didn't plan on leaving it with just dust on her shoes. The next morning, Darren stood in the Stanton Building's elevator, holding a crowbar in one hand and a thermos in the other. The silence stretched thick between the old elevator walls, broken only by the mechanical groan of its gears. When the doors creaked open, he wasn't sure what he expected, but it definitely wasn't a table set up in the middle of the basement with 2 paper cups and a box of pastries. "Is this your idea of bribery?" he asked as he approached, eyebrows raised. Kiera looked up from a folder, her hair pulled into a loose braid today. "Only if it works." He set down his tools and eyed the spread suspiciously. "What's the catch?" "No catch," she said, handing him a coffee. "Just figured you might like something warm before you start swinging that thing around." Darren took the cup but didn't sit. "You always bring breakfast to the basement." "No," she said, flipping a page. "But I've never met anyone who made cleaning one feel like a conversation worth repeating." He let out a small laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. "You've got a strange way of flattering people." "You'd rather I lie?" He finally sat, the folding chair squeaking beneath him. "No." "I've had enough of lies to last a lifetime." Her eyes flicked up from the folder. "Someone burned you." He took a sip of coffee before answering. "Not just someone, enough someones." Kiera didn't press. Instead, she closed the folder and leaned back in her chair. "I'm supposed to be in a meeting uptown right now." "What stopped you?" "You." Darren's hand froze around his cup. She didn't blink. "I've been in rooms full of board members, investors, deal makers. Not one of them made me want to skip a strategy session." He cleared his throat. "You really know how to make a guy question his wardrobe choices." She laughed, then stood and walked toward one of the boxes near the wall. "Help me open this." "I think it's from the original tenants." He followed, pried the box open, and pulled out a stack of yellowed envelopes and brittle ledgers. Kiera picked up one of the envelopes and ran her fingers over the faded ink. "These are from the 40s, she murmured. "This building has more history than I thought." "Everything gets covered in dust eventually," Darren said. "Doesn't mean it stops mattering." She looked at him, startled by the quiet depth in his voice. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have looked like if one thing had gone differently?" she asked softly. "All the time," he said. "But then I look at Bella, and I figure whatever wrong turn I took, it still got me to her." Kiera didn't answer right away. She set the envelope down and leaned against the wall. "My father wanted me to marry someone from his circle, someone who knew how to play the game." "Did you?" "No," she said, her voice sharper now. He didn't like the word no. He still doesn't. Darren crouched near the box and began organizing the papers. "So you're the rebellious daughter of a rich man." "I'm the daughter of a man who doesn't understand that being alone isn't the same as being independent." He glanced up. "You sound like someone who's been independent for a long time." "I had to be," she said. "I built my company without his money, without his approval. Every deal I closed, every property I flipped, it was all me." Darren's gaze didn't waver. "And yet you're down here with a guy who owns one pair of work boots and a truck that barely makes it uphill." "I'm not here for your boots," she said. He stood slowly. "Then what are you here for?" Her breath caught. She hadn't prepared for that question. "Maybe I'm figuring it out." They didn't speak for a moment. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, it was weighted, like the pause before a decision that couldn't be unmade. Then Darren chuckled. "You ever do something reckless?" "I bought an entire block of abandoned storefronts once without permits." "Does that count?" He grinned. "Not really." She stepped closer. "What about you?" "I'm thinking about it." "What would reckless look like for you?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into the box and pulled out a small, dusty photo of the building from decades ago. "History's funny," he said. "Sometimes it survives in the corners no one checks." Kiera looked at the photo, then up at him. "You surprise me," he shrugged. "You confuse me." She laughed again, and the sound echoed in the old basement like a bell. Just then, Darren's phone buzzed. He checked the screen and his jaw tightened. "Something wrong?" she asked. "It's Clara. Bella's running a fever. I need to go." Kiera grabbed her coat. "I'll drive you." He hesitated. "You don't have to. I want to." They reached the surface and walked to a sleek black car parked at the curb. Darren paused beside it, eyeing the polished exterior. You drive this. Is it too clean for you? She teased. He got in without answering. The leather smelled like luxury and restraint. As she pulled into traffic, he pressed a hand to his knee, bouncing it anxiously. She gets sick sometimes, he said. She's been better lately, but it still scares me. Kiera kept her eyes on the road. You don't have to explain anything, he glanced at her. I know, but I want to. They pulled up to his building 15 minutes later. Darren was out of the car before it stopped, rushing inside. Kiera waited by the curb, fingers tightening on the wheel. A few minutes later, he reappeared with Bella asleep in his arms, her cheek flushed and her head resting against his shoulder. She just needs rest, he said, voice low. But I think I'm gonna stay home tomorrow. Kiera opened her door and stepped out. Do you need anything? He shook his head. You've already done more than I expected. She looked at him a long moment. I meant what I said. I skipped a meeting for you. Darren shifted Bella in his arms. You might want to be careful with things like that. Why? Because I'm not the kind of man who forgets what people give up for him. She didn't speak, just nodded once, then turned and got back into the car. As she drove away, Darren carried Bella upstairs, his mind racing. He hadn't asked for this, whatever this was, but it had found him anyway. And something told him it wasn't finished yet. Rain traced delicate lines across the window pane of Darren's small kitchen as he stood barefoot, one arm resting against the counter, the other cradling a lukewarm mug of tea. Bella was asleep again, finally cool to the touch after a restless night. Clara had promised to sit with her for a few hours so he could run errands, though he hadn't moved an inch yet. He didn't know what he was waiting for. Maybe for the weight in his chest to settle, or for the memory of Kiera's voice at the curb to stop echoing in his head. All he knew was that something had shifted. Not gradually, but like a fault line giving way under pressure. The knock at the door was soft, like it didn't want to startle anyone. He opened it and found her standing there, coat dripping, hair pulled back tightly, her breath visible in the cold. I thought you'd be at work, he said, surprised. I was, she replied. Then I left, again. He stepped aside without a word. She peeled off her coat, hesitated only briefly before hanging it on the peg beside Bella's tiny pink rain jacket. You shouldn't keep doing that, he said carefully. Walking away from your world like that. I'm not walking away, she said, her voice calm. I'm walking toward something that finally feels real. He didn't answer. Instead, he gestured toward the table and pulled out a chair for her. She sat, hands resting on the worn wood, eyes scanning the small space. You built something steady here, she said. Even if it's small. It's all I had left to build, he replied. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. I had everything, and I realized I couldn't name one thing that actually belonged to me. You own buildings. Buildings can crumble, she said. What you have here, this life with Bella, it's built on something much harder to shake. He sat across from her, arms folded. Why are you really here? Because I want to be, she said. And because I've been thinking about that night we met. You didn't know who I was. You didn't care. You looked at me like I was someone worth knowing. You are. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. I bought the Stanton building. He blinked. You bought it. I made an offer to the owners last night. They accepted this morning. Why? Because I want to renovate it into something that matters. A community center, art classes, childcare, a space for people who get ignored. He stared at her, stunned. That's unexpected. I need someone to oversee the project, she said. Someone who knows what it means to build something from the ground up. His brow furrowed. You want me to run construction? I want you to run all of it, she said. I'll handle the budget, the permits, the city. You handle the people. The heart. Darren leaned back, breath leaving him in a slow exhale. That's a lot of trust. You've earned it, she said, and I've never offered that lightly. He was silent for a long moment. Then he stood, walked to the counter, and poured her a cup of tea. When he returned, he set it in front of her, his fingers brushing hers. You're not like anyone I've ever met, he said. That's a good thing. That's the best thing. She wrapped her hands around the cup, letting the warmth sink in. I don't want to make this complicated, Darren. I'm not offering you a job so I can keep you close. I'm offering you a job because you're the only person I trust to make this more than just another project. And if I say yes, then we build something that matters. Together, and if I say no, then I'll still find a way to see you again, he chuckled. That's a CEO answer if I've ever heard one. I'm not here as a CEO, she said, her voice quieter now. I'm here as someone who hasn't stopped thinking about you. He watched her for a moment. The way her fingers tightened slightly around the cup, the way her eyes didn't blink when she spoke, there was no performance, no angle, just truth. You're serious about this, he said. I don't do anything halfway. He reached for the paper, unfolded it slowly, and read the details. Then he looked up at her. Bella needs stability. I can't chase dreams if it means risking that. Which is exactly why I want you, she said. Because you know what matters. I'm not asking you to gamble. I'm asking you to lead. He leaned forward, elbows on the table. You understand what you're getting into. My life doesn't come with champagne and private jets. I have enough of those for both of us, she said. I'm not looking for more. I'm looking for something that keeps me grounded. He stood up and walked to the hall just as Bella's soft voice called out from her room. A moment later, he returned with her in his arms, her cheeks still rosy but her eyes clearer. Kiera stood and smiled gently. Hi, sweetheart, Bella blinked at her. I remember you. I'm glad, Kiera said. I brought you something. She pulled out a small plush fox from her bag and held it out. Bella took it, nestled it against her chest, and leaned her head on her father's shoulder again. You didn't have to do that, Darren said. I wanted to. He looked at her, really looked, past the polished posture, past the sharp wit and the business acumen. And what he saw was a woman who'd stepped out of her world not because she was lost, but because she'd finally found something she wanted to fight for. All right, he said. I'll do it, she blinked. You will, we'll do it together, he said. But this isn't just about the building. I know, she said, her voice catching. It's about us. Outside, the rain had started to slow. The clouds were breaking apart, one thread of gold light slipping between them. He reached for her hand. She didn't flinch, she didn't pull away. And for the first time in a long time, neither of them felt like they were standing at the edge of something uncertain. They were already home. The old hardwood floors of the Stanton building creaked beneath Darren's boots as he stepped into the freshly cleared main floor. Sunlight spilled through the tall windows, lighting dust motes like gold threads. Where once there had been rot and ruin, now there was space open, full of possibility. The walls had been reinforced, the interior gutted and reframed, and for the first time he could see it, the future taking shape. Kiera stood near the central beam, clipboard in hand, her expression unreadable. He walked up behind her. You're quiet. I'm calculating, he raised an eyebrow. Bad news. No, just trying to wrap my head around the fact that for once, all the numbers are adding up. Must be a strange feeling. She turned to him. Terrifying, but I think I like it. He nudged the clipboard down gently. You've been staring at that for 15 minutes. I'm not used to letting other people hold the reins. You're not letting them. You're choosing to share them. That's different. Her eyes softened as they searched his. You have a way of saying things that make me stop spinning. That's because you never stop moving. Maybe I didn't want to. Until now. Before he could reply, the sound of Bella's laughter echoed from the far hall, followed by footsteps and the shuffle of small sneakers. She came into view with a paint roller nearly as tall as she was, her cheeks flushed. Daddy, I helped Miss Tamara finish the mural wall. Darren crouched. Let me guess you picked purple and orange, she said proudly. Because Miss Kiera said this place needed to feel like sunshine. Kiera bent down beside them. You did a great job, Bella. Bella leaned toward her. Are you and Daddy gonna get married now? Kiera blinked, caught completely off guard. That's a big question. Darren coughed, clearly trying not to laugh. Maybe let the grown-ups handle the timeline, kiddo. Bella shrugged, already skipping away, the roller dragging behind her like a parade float. Kiera stood slowly, her gaze on Darren now. She doesn't miss much. No. She never has. They stood there for a beat too long, the quiet between them no longer full of tension, but of something waiting to be said. I have something for you, she said suddenly. He followed her past the scaffolding and into the small temporary office they'd set up. From behind a stack of plans and samples, she pulled out a rolled document tied with a red ribbon. He took it and untied it carefully, then read the bold lettering at the top, Property Transfer Agreement. His name was listed as co-owner. He looked up. You're transferring half the building to me. You've rebuilt every inch of it with your hands. It's as much yours as mine, more probably. That's not how it usually works. I've spent most of my life doing what's usual. It never gave me what this has." His voice was low, stunned. "Kiera, this is a lot." She stepped closer. "I don't want to build a future where you're just along for the ride. I want us to build it together." He set the paper down and reached for her hand. "Then let's stop talking about it." Her eyes widened slightly as he leaned in, brushing his lips against her slow, certain, unhurried. Her clipboard hit the floor with a soft thud, and her arms wrapped around his neck, pulling him closer. When they finally parted, she rested her forehead against his. "Promise me something," she whispered. "Anything. Don't ever let me run so fast I forget to stop and feel this." He kissed her again, softer this time. "You're not running anymore." Later that week, they stood beneath the newly installed glass ceiling of the Stanton Building's atrium for the grand opening. String lights hung from steel beams, casting a warm glow over the crowd. Bella twirled near the stage in a yellow dress, her curls bouncing as Tamara, now head of the center's youth art program, played a soft tune on the piano. Darren adjusted the lapels of his suit jacket, borrowed and slightly too tight across the shoulders. Kiera brushed invisible lint from his sleeve. "You clean up well," she said. "I was about to say the same." She wore a floor-length navy gown, her hair swept back, a diamond drop pendant resting just above her collarbone. He'd never seen anyone look like that, like power and grace and fire, all wrapped in velvet. The mayor stepped up to the mic and began thanking donors and partners, but Darren barely heard a word. His eyes were on Kiera, who smiled politely but leaned slightly into him, her hand resting over his heart. After the speeches, she turned to him. "There's something else I haven't told you. Should I be nervous? I've decided to step back from Fallen and Heart. Not completely, just enough to prioritize this, us." His brows lifted. "You're serious?" "I don't need to prove anything anymore, not to my father, not to the industry. I've done it. Now I want to live it." He reached for her hand, lifting it to his lips. "Then let's make it count." They danced under the atrium lights, Bella asleep on a nearby bench with Bunny tucked under her arm. The guests slowly trickled out, leaving the building hushed, filled only with the soft hum of distant traffic and the warmth of something permanent. Months passed. The center thrived after school programs, job placement workshops, parenting classes. Darren oversaw operations, his days filled with purpose and sawdust. Kiera divided her time between the foundation, her scaled-back CEO role, and an actual home they built together, just a few blocks from the center. On a warm spring morning, Darren stood on the back porch, coffee in hand, watching Bella chase butterflies through the grass. Kiera stepped beside him, barefoot, holding a folded piece of paper. He looked down. "What's that?" "A letter from my father." His expression shifted. "What does he want?" She opened it and read aloud. "You've done something I never could, built something that means more than money. I was wrong about you, about everything." Darren didn't say anything. He just wrapped his arm around her and pulled her close. She rested her head on his shoulder. "I don't need his approval, but it still feels like a door finally closed." "Good," he said. "Because ours is wide open." Their wedding was small, just close friends, the kids from the center, Clara sobbing into a lace handkerchief. Bella walked Kiera down the aisle, holding her hand tightly, Bunny tucked under her other arm. They said their vows beneath the same glass ceiling where they'd first kissed. There were no grand declarations, just truth, love, and a future that felt like it had already begun the moment they stopped pretending they were from different worlds, because they weren't. They were from the same world all along. They had just needed to find each other to see it.